Hey everyone, InMed Pharmaceuticals. It trades on the Nasdaq under the ticker symbol INM. They now have 2 clinical programs underway and could follow the steps of GW Pharmaceuticals. Could they have a big pharma partnership on the horizon? That and much more coming up next. All right, welcome to the Dales Report, and happy to be joined to the podcast once again, the CEO of InMed Pharmaceuticals, Eric Adams. Eric, how are things?
Great, Chad. How are you doing?
Excellent. Q4 industry, I know, is starting to get some excitement, some momentum going here outside of what you guys are doing, and I know you've been very, very busy. But before we get into like some of the acquisitions and patents and stuff and so on of what you've been doing. What have you been hearing about the overall landscape of the industry for, I guess, investors to get potentially maybe excited before the end of the calendar year?
Yeah, I mean, I think things are headed in the right direction. You see a lot of discussion in Washington that's going in the right direction, you know, with the SAFE Act for sure. You know, we are pretty much, you know, heads down right now trying to work on the integration of our recent acquisition of Bay Medica and getting everything up to speed with that team and with their programs. So, you know, we've been very internally focused the last little bit, but certainly are aware of our surroundings and how things are moving in the right direction.
Well, before we get into some of the recent news, let's talk and recap people. I know you were on last time, but the acquisition of Bay Medica, what that acquisition means and the importance of it all for investors moving forward.
Yeah, well, we've traditionally been focusing on pharmaceutical applications of rare cannabinoids and treating some pretty serious diseases. And in combination with that, we had our own internal, you know, specialty manufacturing approach called Integrison that is more geared towards the pharmaceutical side of things. But, you know, we're well aware of the fact that in the health and wellness space, so the non-prescription, over-the-counter type products is really booming right now in the U.S. Bay Medica is very well positioned as a manufacturer of rare cannabinoids for that space. And we think we can, you know, leverage off of their manufacturing know-how, launch new rare cannabinoids into the health and wellness space, and as well, it's going to you know, help us down the road as we start to look at these pharmaceutical products.
And in the U.S., as you said, like it's booming. That's an understatement. It's growing so much potential rapidly. You had some great news this week on your pharma programs, as you've kind of were outlining with the Bay Medica acquisition, the filing of another patent application using a different cannabinoid treating for neurodegenerative disease. So there's some significant big tech indications mentioned, include Alzheimer's, Huntingtons, and Parkinsons. So as mentioned, these are important indications given the times that we're currently living in. So walk me through, what's the whole relevance for InMed pertaining to all this?
Yeah, I mean, this is, you know, we're continuing our pharmaceutical research. We're looking at the application of these rare cannabinoids and treating a number of different diseases. As you know, CBN is the first product that we brought forward in epidermolysis bullosa, a genetic skin condition that's pretty rare. And we're also looking at glaucoma. That's still preclinical, but we're headed, you know, towards the clinic sometime in the next, say, 12 to 16 months. So we're heading in the right direction with those. But we've always known that the rare cannabinoids as a class of compounds holds a lot of promise in a number of different areas. This is also evidenced by CBD, and you look at what GW Pharma has been able to demonstrate in epilepsy. So there, you know, there's some kind of neurological impact that CBD is having, and they've been able to, you know, really identify that and launch a product specifically for that. So we've thought for some time now, and certainly some of our data from the glaucoma indication, where we saw neural protection as well for these cells at the back of the eye that give you vision, we thought, wow, we think cannabinoids can play an important role here. And so we've been investigating that further in the background. We haven't talked a lot about it just because, you know, as you know, patents are very important, and we need to really stake out our landscape in terms of what we want to be doing. But we have identified another rare cannabinoid that we think holds a lot of promise in the area of, you know, neurodegenerative diseases. And you mentioned a couple of them, you know, things like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, et cetera. So we're very excited about that. The data is very compelling. It's early, right? It's very early, but it's very compelling. And so it just builds on this theory that the company is founded on, that rare cannabinoids in general, but we're focused on the rare ones, do hold a lot of promise in treating a range of different diseases.
Well, if anything, it's just another step in the right direction for the industry, because as it there's already a lot of interest and people are very excited about the therapeutic potentials of some of these rare cannabinoids. But this is big when you bring up Parkinson's, glaucoma. Do you think it has the potential to, see some of these neuro generative diseases like this? And if so, like that's big.
It is big, absolutely. And, if you go back to the fundamentals of pharmaceutical research, a lot of people focus on what we call a rifle approach. So you want to find a very specific compound that binds very specifically with high affinity to a target receptor. And that's where you see the pharmacological effect. But there's a whole host of other drug candidates, a lot of the biologics, for instance, but also what we're seeing with cannabinoids is they hit a very large number of different receptors in the body. And that's why, people attribute so many beneficial health effects to the smoking of cannabis. Is because there's a lot of the cannabinoids that are hitting a lot of different receptors, having a lot of different effects. Now, the trick for us is to identify, the specific cannabinoid that's going to be having a specific effect for a specific disease. And that's really what we're doing. So while we know that they're going to have a broad effect, we're trying to identify individually what those different effects are and make sure that we can deliver, and dose the cannabinoid appropriately to have a meaningful clinical benefit.
So let's bring this all together and forward thinking as well. You now currently have 2 pharma programs underway. First question, what stages are they at? And I guess forward thinking, where do you see, the biggest potential for perhaps a big pharma partnership?
That's a great question. So we do have a couple of programs underway right now. As I mentioned, we have the dermatological program, INM 755, which is a CBN cream directed towards epidermolysis bullosa. Now, we've initiated a phase 2 clinical trial, primarily in Europe and in Israel as well. And there we're looking for the initial potential, benefits in this specific patient population. So it's a rare disease, and you add to that the fact that, we're asking a lot of very interesting questions of the drug in that disease. So that's a program that's going to take a while to find the patients and really measure, the potential benefits. So that's going to be going on for the next year or so. The second program is in glaucoma, and again, it's CBN, and it's delivered by eye drop. That's still preclinical. We have probably, like I said, a year, maybe a little bit more before we're prepared to enter human clinical trials. We still have a lot of work to do in terms of, establishing the toxicology profile and making sure we have the right dosing and speaking with regulatory authorities, interacting with the FDA. So we have a lot of things to do in the next year. It's going to be very busy, but a very exciting program. Part of what we've seen in our early data is not only can we reduce the intraocular pressure that is characteristic of glaucoma, but we think we can also protect the cells at the back of the eye that give vision. And that's what leads to blindness, is the pressure on these cells.
Right.
So that's the neuroprotective effect. And again, that kind of launched our thinking into, we identified CBN as the most active cannabinoid in neuroprotection. What about other types of neurons in the body, the central nervous system, the brain? They're slightly different depending on where you go. So that's where we kind of launched this research that's led us to look at things like Alzheimer's disease, and then associated diseases, which would include Parkinsons and Huntingtons, and who knows beyond that. We think there may be other potential as well. So in terms of partnerships, certainly glaucoma is a very big market. We think that has a specific.
How big is it?
It's 10 billion, worldwide.
Wow,
there's 80 million patients, and these are, broad numbers. I could be a little off, but, it's a very big problem worldwide. Compared to EB, which is, very few patients, under 100,000 patients worldwide. But still, for the right company, that could be a very interesting product in their portfolio if they're already specializing in dermatology, if they're specializing in rare diseases. That's the kind of product that would fit nicely with them. So there has been interest. We continue discussions. Nothing to report on that front, but certainly there's interest in this class of compounds and what it may hold. And then you look down the road to things like Alzheimer's. I mean, of course, that's that's a holy grail if you can do something important in that disease and show a meaningful clinical benefit.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to point out too was that I now see that you have some new analogs in NCEs, and for those watching, it stands for new chemical identities. So this was through your Bay Medica acquisition. So educate me and my viewers here. What is the commercial importance of these new analogs and related patents? And most importantly, why is this important for investors to know?
Yeah, so cannabinoids are naturally occurring. You cannot patent the molecule itself, so you can't own the molecule as you typically might in other pharmaceutical developments. That dampens a little bit the enthusiasm for investigating this class of compounds. Now, GW has shown there's a heck of a business model out there if you can show benefit, right? But not owning the chemical itself dampens a little bit of the potential partnership interest. Let's say that. New chemical entities, what BayMedica has done is they've taken these naturally occurring compounds and they've modified them slightly with, by adding different chemical groups to the molecule to enhance its pharmacological activity, to enhance its safety, maybe make it easier to deliver. So they've done things that are going to benefit the product going forward. Now, the real importance behind that is you can now patent these analogs. So you can take CBN, you can make 50 different individual compounds, and you could patent each one of those. And then you can screen and see which one you think might be more beneficial moving forward.
Interesting.
It could be CBD, it could be any of the cannabinoids. So you actually own, the product outright, assuming you're granted the patent that you've applied for.
GW, as we've talked about in the past, since they were acquired, we look at diversification, and I believe you now have, I think is it 12, I believe, when it comes to patents within your whole portfolio?
We have 12 patent families. So if you look at...
Patent families, sorry.
Yeah. So you can look at specific patents that may have sub-patents that can spin off of that. But we have 12, actually I think we have 13 now with this new one. Essentially... What we have is 7 or so that are related to manufacturing, which is important because we need to be able to make these not only natural but also these cannabinoid analogs. But now looking at the diseases and what have you, we have 5, I think now 6 patent families related to these different indications where we're looking to have some commercial protection on the back end of doing all of this expensive and timely research.
Well, a lot of investors, they want to see what's the next GW, what's the biggest opportunity. And, when you look at their, acquisition when they were acquired, I think it was about a year ago, maybe a little bit longer. But what has it done for your company specifically in the overall landscape of the industry? Obviously, there's a lot more credibility involved. But have you seen big changes since that acquirement and more and more people becoming more and more interested with what companies like yourself in the space are doing?
Yeah, I can't go into any detail about the discussions that we've had, but certainly it's opened the eyes of a lot of companies to say that this is a legitimate space. That potentially not having the underlying chemical entity patent isn't a barrier to being successful in developing these kinds of compounds. So I think there's always been a general interest because people have been aware of cannabinoids and their potential for decades. But now with the success of GW, it's kind of paved the road a little bit for everybody else to go down the same pathway, mimic their approach to development and eventual commercialization. So certainly I think it's a much more interesting area than it was a year ago. Anytime a company, sells for, $7 billion, which was, 14 times, I think their revenues at that stage. It wakes people up and, they start paying closer attention for sure.
14 times. Think about that. Just the potential, what people are thinking of where this industry is going to go. But like you said, everybody wants the next opportunity. So listen, I know you're busy. Keep up the great work. And I appreciate you checking in with us and giving us an update. But all is well. And I think the industry is about to heat up too. So again, thanks for checking in.
Great talking to you, Chad. And I look forward to doing it again sometime soon.
Yeah. Thanks, Eric.